having a heart. At theprivatesectoract.com, that's where it starts, singing our song. What's going on? United we stand strong. Let's have some masses of chambers, email forms. While you're taking the foreclosure, treat it as a casino game. 3 people involved, you have no shame. You're selling judgments as the human beings bow down to. Hey guys, Ty Griffith. This is what's going on, how we are human rights activists, and how does it apply in exactly this situation. As you're going to see, every one of these people that were in foreclosure did exactly what the courts asked them to do. They asked them to either sell the home or pay out the mortgage. So this is where the human rights approach comes in. These people succeeded at exactly what the courts asked them to do. How the lawyers interact with these people, human rights are being stomped all over. So as you're going to see, all these emails are sent. There was like about 23 emails sent by about 3 different parties. And what happens is that these lawyers don't even acknowledge any of these emails. They're not communicating with the people. That is stomping all over their human rights and then going and just taking away their house. That is not what a lawyer's job is there to do. The lawyer is there to represent the bank. The bank needs to make sure the people representing them are acting in an appropriate manner. Now, in this situation, all these lawyers have gone to school for 7 years, and at the end of it, they should know how to communicate. This is really what it comes down to. Human rights activists, you got to take a look at this. The lawyers are not answering any of the questions. There's very simple questions, but the number one thing to understand is that these people did everything they were asked to do. As human rights activists, we are going to show you the big institutions through their lawyers are just taking away people's houses without answering any questions. Is that every one of these people that were being foreclosed on handled it very responsibly. They went and sold the home. That's what the courts and the banks and the lawyers asked them to do. And they succeeded. Now, for the courts and the lawyers just to ignore that, yeah, you succeeded, whatever, but we're going to make more money just giving you a judgment and just ignoring your deal and destroying it, that is a big problem. That's the first point you need to understand. Every one of these people here, the lawyers and the judges, part of their job is making sure that everybody gets due process. This is what makes our Canadian court systems fair. That is what we need to understand here. We're human rights activists. Let's approach this as a human rights activist point of view. The people did exactly what they're asked to do, and they're completely ignored it. They just ignored them, took away their rights, and ended up taking away their house, and that is not what our Canadian courts are supposed to be representing. So that's the number one thing you have to understand here. Human rights approach. The lawyers need to communicate. That's obvious, but they need to answer the questions in order to get everybody the money. Every one of these people, remember, foreclosure did exactly what they were asked to do. They were told to either sell the home or pay out the mortgage. Now, they elected to sell the home. They did. Now, they found an entity who's going to allow them to stay in the home and rent it back for them. It's a win-win-win. If you notice there, they didn't go to the bank. And this is why they're just shutting down the deal and saying, well, we don't care. We make more money on just selling the judgment. Well, when these people succeed and they're allowed to stay in the home, well, the courts are just ignoring it. That doesn't make any sense, guys. About 4 entities here that are being stomped all over by the big institutions, and they're all of the private sector. That person they sold it to is now gone to the private sector for the financing, and now he's asking for equity and redemption, proof of ownership, because the bank could have sold the note. We know very well that they sell the notes all the time.
Last month alone, more than 70,000 families lost their homes. Foreclosures jumped a staggering 158% year over year. So can the little guy fight back? Well, Greg Hunter thinks so.
I think they can. In foreclosure, the bank has to show it owns your house. But what most people don't know is almost half the time, the banks don't have that paperwork to prove it in court. In many cases, it ends up lost or destroyed. It's a national problem that the banks would love to keep quiet, because knowing that could be your best defense in fighting foreclosure.
And for them to just come and say, well, no, the big banks just get to do what they want to do and they're taking away the deal in everybody's house. Unbelievable. Many of these people had the homes in their name already from title, because they're right in the middle of conveyancing. So the people who bought the home already had the home in title, and many of these people got their houses ripped away from them without even any due process. Due process is what makes the court system
fair here in Canada. Now, in this situation, all these lawyers have gone to school for 7 years, and at the end of it, they should know how to communicate. They went to private sector financing. When you look at their conditions and what they're asking, it's really just asking you just prove ownership of the note, because that is called equity on redemption. It's called proof of ownership. Mortgages are bought and sold every day.
Most people don't know is almost half the time the banks don't have that paperwork to prove it in court. In many cases, it ends up lost or destroyed. It's a national problem that the banks would love to keep quiet, because knowing that could be your best defense in fighting foreclosure.
In the foreclosure situation, many of these people now won't get anything from the banks, so they went to private lenders and private people. Private lenders these days, of course, are asking banks and the lawyers for proof of ownership. Very important. If they sold the note and they take the house, the bank would get paid twice. If they go and sell the note and then they go and take the house, well, they get paid twice. So this is really all these emails are saying. They asked them to sell the home, they did. We have the money coming from the private sector. They want to hand it over to them. And they're just shutting them out. This is a human rights activist problem, because if they're shutting out now the private sector from allowing to go and participate in the real estate industry, well, I'm telling you that American dream, well, it doesn't exist anymore if we're not allowed to get into real estate. Why do the judges act the way they do? Why do the lawyers act the way they do? Most people, once we give them this information, it goes, oh, that makes sense now. The Court of Queen's Bench sells judgments and debt on the world market because they're interacting with your person as your chief executive officer status. They're selling judgments. What does that mean? The world market buys debt. Well, what do they do with it after? Well, that's what the world markets are for. They actually sell to the world market. It's been around forever. We're just becoming conscious and aware of it as the private sector. The Court of Queen's Bench is listed on the world market. If they're listed on the world market, they have conflict of interest. Our last stop is Canadians for our truth and justice, which is the industry they're in. Whose best interest do they have in mind? The general public, the private sector, or now their shareholders? If anybody makes money off that piece of paper and that conflict bond that was created, why does it 100% go to the collector, which is the Court of Queen's Bench? Either way, they take it and they sell it to the world market. Now, that leaves everybody sitting there going, okay, well, wait a minute. That means if they get judgments against people, they make more money. The biggest judgments there are comes from the banks. So when these banks come with their huge judgments, that the Court of Queen's Bench knows that, hey, if I get a judgment against the little guy here, the private sector, they get to sell it to the world market. Conflict of interest, conflict of interest. When you do look at these transcripts and you look at these emails, you will see and realize, yeah, they're selling judgments. Sign up. This is all about the courts. The Court of Queen's Bench are selling judgments, and it is not allowing the private sector, that's us, win against the institutions, period. I don't care who they are. They're all the institution. When they come against one of us little guys, now they divide and conquer. They come and create judgments on us that is created actually paper money out of thin air. Let's call it what it is. It's debt. They sell it to the world market. That is a big problem where all of us, the private sector, that's our last stop for truth and justice. They're selling the judgments, guys, just so you know. You're fully informed. Ty Griffiths signing off, but it is very important for you to understand from a human rights point of view exactly how we are applying this information, because the lawyers cannot just not answer people's questions and go take their houses away. As a human rights activist, what we need you to do is we will sign agency over to you, every one of these people, so you can start interacting with the lawyers, and they, by law, would have to interact with you because it's just agency. I mean, that would be taking human rights away from people if they say they're not going to interact with their chosen agent. So guys, if you just want to complain, I mean, we got the complaint sheet up there for the lawyers, for sure, where the information is, where to send it. This is what we need to do. Sign up, become a human rights activist, get involved through a reality TV, because the big reality of it is that you get to talk to the lawyers, and lawyers have to talk back to you. So guys, signing off there, get excited about it. Keep clicking. Very excited you're coming on down the rabbit hole. See you later. Peace out. Destination Truth, guys. Hot Justice, RealityTV.com, PrivateSectorAct.com. We need it. PrivateSectorAct.com. Sing on our song. United, we stand strong.
while you're taking the foreclosure, treat it as a casino game. 3 real people involved, you have no shame. You're selling judgments as the human beings bow down to